Hey girls, Kaylee here. So I wanted to do another basic 101 kind of tutorial on how to curl your hair. A lot of people ask me really basic questions in the comments that I'm not always able to get to, or I answer it and then it goes down the comments and other people never see it. So I thought it would be good just to do a video that kind of encapsulates all of the frequently asked questions about curling hair. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about is what's actually happening to your hair when you're curling it, because that's going to help me explain some things better later on. So we're going to start with that. So basically your hair has three layers. You have your cuticle, which is your outermost layer, and it's lots of little shingles that lay around the inner part of your hair. So you've got lots of little layers hanging out down there. The layer underneath that is the cortex. That cortex is probably the most important part of your hair. It contributes 80% of your hair's strength. It determines your hair's strength, your elasticity, your color, and your wave pattern. And it holds all of the keratin protein that makes up your hair. So it's kind of a big deal. And then inside of that is the medulla, which really doesn't do anything. And a lot of people, like blondes, don't even really have a medulla. So we're not even going to worry about that guy. So your cuticle layer is kind of lots of little shingles. The shingles can be raised or they can be lowered based on heat, how you've conditioned your hair, and whether it's been chemically damaged or damaged from environmental stress, like lots and lots of wind or a lot of salt being put on the hair. That kind of stuff can also raise and kind of fray your cuticle. The cuticle's function is to protect the cortex. Now your cortex is what determines your wave pattern. It's also built up of your keratin protein. So inside of your keratin proteins you have these things called hydrogen bonds, which are broken whenever your hair is heated up or wetted down. And then whenever your hair dries or cools, they reform. And that's what we're doing when we're curling our hair, is that we're actually breaking down those hydrogen bonds inside of the cortex so that we can reshape the hair. It's like a crazy, scary process, but every single time you get your hair wet, your hydrogen bonds are broken, so don't worry, it's not a big deal. You're not like destroying your hair or anything. So you have to be able to get past the cuticle into the cortex to be able to change the shape of your hair. And that's important because a lot of people that have hair that's hard to curl mostly will have a very intact or very nicely smoothed down cuticle layer because it's protecting the inner cortex of the hair. And then some people will have very, very resistant hair that has a very, very tight cuticle layer, and those people are going to have trouble with a lot of things like coloring their hair, chemically treating their hair, like chemical reformations like a relaxer or perming. They're also going to have trouble with curling their hair because you can't get into the cortex because your cuticle is so tight. So for people that say that like it is physically impossible to curl my hair, that's probably what's going on. So with all that said, I'm going to talk about what you need to think about when you're preparing your hair for curling it, as in what you're putting on when you're in your shower, what you use after the shower, and then what you use right before you curl your hair, because all of those things matter. The first thing you want to think about is to not have your hair too conditioned or too healthy. And the reason why I say that is because of what we talked about with the cuticle layer. If the cuticle layer is laying down really smoothly and it's really nice and conditioned and it's like, happy there, you're not really going to be able to curl it as easily. Also, those humectants from the conditioners can actually kind of pull your hair down a little bit, especially if you have very fine hair like mine. It's going to make it a lot harder to hold a curl. So some things you can do, you could curl on the second day when your hair is a little bit dirtier, it has a little bit more grit to it, your cuticle is probably just a little bit off balance from having a day where, day since it's been conditioned, and that can help a little bit as well. Another thing you can do is to actually use less conditioners. Now I don't recommend this for like every day because it's not going to be as good for your hair, but if you have a special event that you want to have your hair curled for and you want to make sure that it's going to stay, use a little bit less conditioner in the shower. And then if you're a big leave-in conditioner person like I am, really limit or completely leave out your leave-in conditioner step. For me, when I curl my hair for my tutorials, I use a tiny bit less conditioner and then I use a lot less leave-in conditioner because I do still want my hair conditioned, but it is going to help my hair to curl a lot better and look a lot better whenever it's got the less leave-in conditioners on it. Alright, so the next thing that you can do, if you already have your conditioner, you didn't overdo the conditioner, your hair isn't too healthy, or maybe you waited till your second day after you've washed it to go ahead and curl it, the next thing that you can think about is working on products that you put on your hair beforehand. Now before I even use a hairdryer on my hair, I'm putting in products that are going to help to hold the style. So some things you can think about using, you could use a mousse. Where's my mousse? There it is. You could use a mousse, and what this basically does is it's a nice little aerated kind of foam that goes through your hair and just adds a little bit of extra hold. It's kind of the same thing that a hairspray or a gel does. Basically this is slightly less concentrated than a gel, so it's going to be a little bit better for hair like mine. It's also really nice because it's easy to distribute throughout your hair. So if you find something that has a nice firm hold and you just go ahead and put that through your hair before you use your hairdryer on it, it's still going to be on your hair when you go to curl it, and it's going to help to hold that style just a little bit better. Another thing you can do if your hair is very resistant is to actually amp up the hold just a little bit and actually use a gel before you dry your hair. Now you don't want to overdo this or you're going to end up with really crunchy hair, but I use maybe a quarter size of this on my hair sometimes before I dry it, and then I curl it, and the curls last infinitely better with something like this or with a mousse because you have that extra support holding your hair into a curl. Another thing that people sometimes do, and I've actually had people recommend to me, is to put hairspray on your hair before you curl it. For me, I don't know why, it just feels like that's so much more damaging for your hair. Even though I like to put mousses on my hair first, but for some reason the hairspray just feels a little bit too much for me. But that is something that you can do if you want like a lighter hold, if you don't want to have to be putting on mousses or gels, or you only want to buy one product, something like that, you could just put on the hairspray first, and that'll help you a lot. And the next thing you absolutely have to use before you curl your hair is a heat protectant. Now, I want to talk a little bit about just how damaging is curling your hair on your hair, because I have some people that watch my videos that are just like heat-ophobes, like they will not use any heat on their hair. And I understand it because it's not great for your hair. It's certainly not the best option if you want to keep your hair extremely shiny and healthy and all of that kind of stuff, but it doesn't have to be just detrimental to your hair. Basically, whenever you're curling your hair, the thing that's going to make it a little bit dry it out, it's going to make it look a little bit worse, is damaging the cuticle, because once you damage the cuticle, then you can damage the cortex a lot easier. So what you want to be doing is protecting your cuticle by using a heat protectant. I use the Tresemme Heat Tamer Spray. I also use Big Healthy Hair's Soy Touchable leave-in product too, so I've got kind of doubled up on that. And what that's going to do is it's just going to absorb a little bit of the damage from your curling iron on your cuticle so that you don't get quite as much of the damage onto your cuticle. It's going to protect it a little bit longer. You know, it's not great for you, obviously. It's really bad for you to use it every single day. I've seen girls' hair where they flat ironed it every day and you can tell. It's really better to kind of mix it up and not use as much heat if you can. But if you have a special event or like on the weekend you like to curl your hair, it's not going to harm your hair permanently. There's a lot of things you can do to help yourself out. I mean, obviously you got your heat protectant. And then, you know, throughout the rest of the week, don't use too much heat on your hair. Make sure that you're protecting your hair when you use your hair dryer. Use a deep conditioning mask once a week. Things like that will really help to maintain the health of your hair even if you add curling into it. So don't feel like heat tools are completely off limits. Like, yes, you do need to be careful with them and kind of respect how dangerous they can be for your hair, but you know, don't be too afraid of it. Okay, I have two more things. First of all, I want to talk about how hot do you put your iron on for your hair. Sometimes with the clipless iron or a clip iron, you'll be able to choose how hot your hair gets or how hot the iron gets. And people always want to know, like, what setting do you put that on? I recommend the finer your hair, the lower you go with it. With mine, I try to stay within the medium range. Right here, you can see you have numbers 1 through 10. This is a Hot Tools 3/4 inch curling iron. And I would really never get past 6 or 7 on here, even if you have thick hair. You really don't need to get too hot with this. And if you're able to choose degree-wise, as in, like, you know, you can choose 200 degrees or 400 degrees or whatever, I recommend, this is just me, this is not, like, this is just my intuition, so just take this for what it is. I recommend for fine hair staying around 200 to 250, don't get much more than that. And then for medium hair, you could go up past 250 and go into like 350 if you wanted to. But no matter what your hair type, you should not go past 390 degrees because it is actually chemically impossible to make a heat protectant that protects your hair past 390 degrees. There's a lot of hair straighteners out there these days and curling irons that get up into like 500 degrees. There's no way that's okay for your hair. So make sure that you're using a curling setting that is conducive to your hair type. Like I said, with the fine hair, your cuticle is not going to be as resilient, so you're not going to be able to use as much heat on your hair. So keep it low. You know, I keep mine around 3 or 4. I don't really go too crazy with it. If you have, you know, thicker hair, you can always go up depending on how thick your hair is, because it's going to be a lot more resilient. It's going to be able to take a lot more damage or a lot more heat than fine hair is going to be able to. Yeah, that's what I meant. Alright, and then the last thing is, what do I recommend? Like, as far as buying a curling iron, you know, this is your first curling iron ever, what do I recommend if you can only have one curling iron? I would actually recommend this Hot Tools 3/4 inch iron, and I have a couple reasons for that. First of all, it's a really good iron. It does a good job of giving me curls that last a long time. It's pretty inexpensive. It's around $25 I know on Amazon, and then you can usually get it in a place like Sally's or something for like $35, just so depending on how much you want to spend. It's $25 to $35, which is close to like drugstore priced, so it's really good. It's also a professional brand, so you get like an 8-foot long cord, which is really helpful, and all of that. And aside from this being a good iron, I think a 3/4 inch is going to be a good size to do a lot of stuff. A lot of updos and curls can be made from this. If you wrap your hair around the outside of it like a clipless iron, you can get curls similar to this. And then obviously you can get curls similar to this from wrapping it with the clip. If your hair is easier to curl, you might want to go up to an inch, because the reason that I choose a 3/4 inch is that for fine to medium hair types, usually your hair loosens up about 1/4 inch, and so it's good to go a little bit smaller than you actually want. But if your hair curls really easily, then you might want to go up to an inch, because this can be a little bit like Taylor Swifty kind of small. So if that's not what you're going for, go up to an inch. But that's what I recommend. And the reason that I recommend an iron with a clamp is because you can wrap your hair around this and not use the clamp, and it's a clipless curling iron. You don't even have to take this little dude off. So I don't really think that there's a lot of need to go out and buy different curling irons unless you really are into that really fast beachy look, because there are some things that this iron gives that this one doesn't give. This one provides a little bit more spring. It's a little bit it just looks a little bit more natural than when you just wrap this around. But if you want one versatile tool, I recommend doing something like this. Curious about the iron that I'm using today with my clipless iron. This one is by Verge. It's called the Curl Styx, and it comes with 2 other attachments like this. I can actually take this one off once it cools down and put in something else. This is really good for me just because you get 3 curling irons in one, and it comes with a cool little bag. So I can actually, once I'm done with it, stick it all back in here and throw that in my drawer with my curling irons, and it's really nice and compact, and I just like that. This gives a really good curl. Like, these curls last really well, and they're really nice and shiny and springy. I really like them. I will link their YouTube in the down bar, because they actually have a YouTube channel that demonstrates each of these different ones. So you guys can check that out if you want to. I just wanted to, because I used that in my Katniss curls tutorial. People wanted to know what I think about it and if I think that it's worth the money, because it is like $100. If you are into the whole clipless curling iron thing and you really think that, you know, if you're into clipless curling irons, I'm not necessarily, but if you are, it is a good deal because they work really well. You get 3 different curling irons for $100, so it's basically like getting 3 irons for $30 each. That makes any sense. And usually clipless curling irons are kind of expensive, so if you are really a clipless curling iron fanatic, like you really would use this a lot, you like this kind of curl, and this is really the only kind of curl that you care about creating, I like these because they last really well. It creates a nice springy curl that lasts well on my hard to curl hair, and I really like how it looks. So if you're in the market for that and that's something that you're interested in and you just want to know if I give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, I give it a thumbs up.